What up, producer friends? Welcome back to Croco Nation. Today we're going to talk about 4 beginner tips in respect to kicks for tech house music. So I'm going to break it down in 4 criteria. One is going to be where to get those kicks and how to sample kicks, whether it's from a song or some sort of loop. Next, we're going to talk about where the kick sits within the mix and some important elements. Then it's going to be saturation or transient shaping. And then lastly is how to add some ear candy to the kick. So the question is, why talk about this? For some of the beginners out there, the kick is extremely important. It's one of the foundations to your track. It's going to add that groove, that rhythm, and it's going to set the tone based off of, you know, what type of bass you're going to use and so forth. You'll notice a lot of people start the track off with the kick. That's not me. It may not be you, but, you know, it's still very important to follow some of these fundamentals and basic rules when it comes to kicks. So let's go ahead and start with the first topic. All right, guys. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is more of like a kick selection or kick choice, right? So one of the things that you want to look for in a kick is based off of what kind of track you're going to make, right? So for example, tech house, you typically want a short and punchy kick. And so the reason being is because the bass lines are going to be fat. So you want to make sure that the low end frequencies aren't clashing, right? And vice versa, right? Let's say you have a big kick. You don't want a big bass, right? Because to my earlier point, the frequencies are going to be clashing. So once you have in mind what kind of kick you want to use or what kind of style you want to use, for example, tech house, you're going to have to figure out where you're going to get those kicks, right? My preferred way is to go to a high quality sound bank and get high quality samples. For example, if you go down on my link below, I have a free house pack on my website, completely free. Did I mention it was free? So for this lesson, we're going to go over how to get a kick from a sample or a song, and I'm going to show you a technique and how to do that, right? Say like you listen to this loop that I grabbed from Splice, for example. We have, I think it's from the Mark Knight pack. It sounds something like this, right? You have all the top end and all the percussions going on, but at the base of it, you have the kick. So it sounds something like this, which is it's a pretty fire loop. That guy's got some great loops. So one of the first things that I do is grab a simpler. Then I drag and drop the loop into the simpler, which is going to be on this channel here. And if you press and hold one of the keys, it's obviously going to play the entire loop, right? So what we're going to do is begin by shortening it. So let's shorten that. Right, we get most of the kick, but then we have the hi-hats that we kind of want to get rid of. Well, not kind of, we want to get rid of it. So to do that, guys, all you're going to do is go to Controls. Then you're going to go to Envelope. Let's put the amount all the way up. It goes only up to 72. Guys, if you know why that is, you can put it on the comments down below, but it goes all the way to 72. So we have to make sure that this amount is there, because if not, this envelope is not going to work. What this envelope is doing, it's activating the EQ or removing some of the frequencies like the filter, right? And so what we want to do here is leave the default and kind of mess with it, right? You can mess with this too, you know, shorter, longer, whatever you'd like. But for this lesson, I'm just going to mess with the frequency for now. You'll see what it does as soon as I play it. See how it kind of gets rid of that. The high end now it just sounds like a kick. So this is one of the many ways on how to take kicks from songs or loops. And of course, if you have any other suggestions, feel free to put it in the comments down below. So the second thing I like to talk about is where the kick sits in the mix. Typically, you want the kick to sit in the middle or in mono. And so you got to be careful when you're using some samples, right? Or when you're sound designing. When I'm sound designing my kicks, I want to make sure that they're mono and that they're dead center, right? One of the ways you can check that is, for example, I dragged in a different loop from that same Mark Knight pack. And so if you zoom in here, you will notice that there are some stereo frequencies. So the original sample that I was using does not have any stereo frequencies that I saw, but this one does. I just want to show you an example visually how it looks like. So the original one I was using is this one here, and you can see that's more of a mono frequency, right? So let's say there was an instance where you have stereo frequencies. A way to take care of that is by going up to the search bar and putting mono, going to audio effects, and just bring down this utility. Now to avoid any phase issues, I turn both of these on, and then I place it in mono. And what that's going to do is make sure everything is in the dead center, and it's going to avoid any phasing issues in the future, right, when you have your kick and bass. All right, guys, I want to throw a little bonus tip in here because I think this is pretty cool, especially if you're a live performing DJ. And so one of the things that you also want to look at is, I like to drag an EQ8. You want to see what key your kick is in, not necessarily to, you know, tune it to the key of your song, but it's more of where is it sitting within the spectrum, you know, the hertz and so forth. The reason I bring that up is because I know a lot of clubs struggle to, you know, push anything under 30 hertz. So your kick is not going to be as powerful and present as if you were to do it, for example, like at 50 or 60, you know, 60 hertz where it peaks. So for example, I have a kick here, and you're going to be able to see it within the spectrum, and it's peaking here. That's about 55.6 hertz, right? The key of A. And so that's going to be really helpful when you're playing live at the club. So just something random that I thought I'd share. All right, guys. So next tip we're gonna talk about is saturation and transient shaping. One of my favorite tools within Ableton that I've seen many people use, including John Summit, is drum bus. If you go to drive and color, you bring in drum bus. Even the default setting is gonna smack. But what you want to do is I'll show you the difference before and after. But typically you want to turn it on. You can mess with the drive however you like. You can bring it down or up. For a kick, I usually like it soft. I turn on the compression. And I put the dry wet to my liking. So the way I usually like to do dry wet signals is I bring it down to 0 and then I start bringing it up casually into the point that I feel sounds right for the track, right? So that's just typically the settings that I like to use, but it's gonna sound something like this. And let's say you want some more transient. Let's say we want it up to like 0.20. That's too much. Right, you're increasing the amplitude, you're increasing, some of the transients, so the kick sounds punchier, you get more oomph, and you can hear it and feel it more within the track. So let's bring it down here. I like it about 60. All right, guys, so this last tip is going to be more of a sound design tip. This is pretty much optional. Like, this will only be used to add some sort of space or color to the kick. So what I typically like to do is add a short reverb, right? I usually go to reverb up here, then go to the room reverb because that's usually a shorter reverb with less decay. And so as you can see here, let's bring this down a little more. Let's bring it to like 778. We'll play with this by ear. This is all preference, guys. I'm going to take out this high cut because what we're going to do is actually add an EQ later, but we'll get there in just a second. So the first thing I'm going to do here is right click. Then we're going to go to group. Right, and then we're going to go to create chain, and this is going to be dry signal, this is going to be the wet signal. What we're going to do first is bring the wet signal down to about -10 dB. We're going to mess with this to fit our liking, right, our preference. But guys, if you hear it with no EQ or anything, it's going to sound something like this. Obviously, it's going to be in the back of the mix, and we don't want that because the kick has to be dominant. So let's play it. Right? It's a little heavy. We don't want those things. So one of the next things we're going to do is drag an EQ8 to the end of this audio effect rack. And we're going to filter out all the frequencies we don't want, right? We're going to filter out where the reverb is going to be present. So anything below here, the reverb is not going to be present. Anything above here, the reverb is not going to be present. And so it sounds something like this. Already sounds cleaner, right? This is without. Then you can just adjust the level. For me, -10 dB sounds great. And that's going to add more room to your kick if you're planning to do some sound design or if it's lacking some sort of space or body. All right, guys, so a little bit of a short one today, but I hope these tips will add value to your music production. These tips are not only useful in tech house, but you can use it for many other genres and electronic dance music. If you found this lesson useful, please consider following. And if you'd like to support the channel, please go to croconation.com. Guys, I just uploaded a brand new free sound bank, and the link's down below. It comes with 20 Serum presets, drums, percussion, and some synths, one-shots, and so forth, just to help you get the party started. All right, guys, take care. Thank you.